What is going on, everybody? Today we have a pretty interesting video. Haven't done anything like this before. Pretty excited to do it though. It's gonna be how the teams that didn't make the playoffs, how they missed the playoffs. It's gonna be one of those types of just kind of looking back and seeing what went wrong for each manager that didn't end up making the playoffs this year. We have 6 of them. Look, it was one of the most competitive years we've ever had in the league, and it showed with multiple 7-win teams missing the playoffs this year. For reference, there have been 7-win teams to make the playoffs every year of the recorded stats. Unfortunate to say the least there. It's just one of the most competitive years. We didn't have that superstar team to dominate the win column, and then we had a couple pretty big losers this year. With that being said, we have Ty missing the playoffs after previously making it the 2 years prior. We had the defending champion and Dom missed the playoffs for the first time in 3 years. Chris missed the playoffs again, making it the second straight time in 3 years that he missed the playoffs, coming off of that back-to-back championship run. Team Didi misses the playoffs once again, making that 2 years in a row, going off of his incredible rookie performance 3 years ago. And AJ missing again and still yet to make the postseason. The second-year manager, although he did better, still going to be out of the playoffs. As mentioned, we're going to get into every single team here, and we're going to start with the GOAT squad. Here we go. Look, starting with the team that I did not expect to be here. The GOAT squad started off 2-0 and looked to be one of the best teams in the league. I mean, coming out of draft night with what appeared to be one of the best wide receiver rooms, ended up being a very mid wide receiver room, in addition to what felt like a very mid Travis Kelce this year. And he said it himself, he's not drafting a tight end first round ever again, and I don't blame him. I think that might be a cardinal rule of fantasy from here on out. In week 6, the GOAT squad acquired Kyren Williams from now named JaxiPad. He sent over Chris Olave and Joe Burrow, and the superstar running back was going to carry this team to the playoffs, I'm sure of it. The week after acquiring him, he got hurt, and he would go on to miss the next 5 games, to which he would drop 5 of his next 6 games. A 1-5 run buried the GOAT squad. But was this all on Kyren? No, it wasn't. It was a big part of that because, as we have seen since he's returned, Kyren's been amazing, but it wasn't Kyren's fault. No, it was in large part due to the manager of the team, the mismanagement of the team, which I have highlighted throughout the season, crushed this team. The GOAT squad received the most You Fucked Up awards than anyone, with 3. And those 3 wins that were directly resulted in a loss because of a mismanagement play, even without Kyren, would have the GOAT squad in the playoffs today. Because as we have seen, like I mentioned earlier, since Kyren has come back, the GOAT squad has been one of the best teams in the league, scoring at high amounts of high-octane volume, and it's great to see, but throughout the whole season, it was the quarterback play. And it was the mismanagement of the quarterback room, having 2 great guys on the roster, not making a move to get rid of either one of them, to potentially get some type of skill player, in a sense, and not judging the matchups accordingly set this team back. Look, he had 3 You Fucked Up awards, and he's walking out of the season with 7 wins. So if you take it that way, this team had the potential to have a 10-win season. Would have been clear-cut #1 team in the league, first round bye. Honestly, a cakewalk to the championship with how good this team is looking. And it just didn't happen for the GOAT squad this year. So I do want to give him a pass on the fact that he had to deal with a lot of injuries with Kyren, with Travis Kelce, with Waddle at some points. Taking into account the things that you can control, there was a lot of mismanagement problems. And I think the manager, not used to this spot, I think, definitely, as I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, that he has always been in the playoffs. He's been a consistent guy, one of the top performers in league history, and he's just not been able to recapture that this season. So a lot to maybe build on for next year, a lot to improve on for next year. Let's move on here to another team. This is going to be Chubb Checker. I don't really want to harp on this guy too much because we have kind of berated him a lot throughout this year, and it's been a tough year. So Chubb Checker, here's a team that was struck with bad luck really early on, like I mentioned. Okay, Chubb Checker started an abysmal 0-5, and in large part, that was because of Nick Chubb going down. But also, most of his team just got out to an absolutely terrible start. George Kittle was off to a terrible start. Deebo Samuel was off to a terrible start. At that point, DeAndre Swift, people were just not clicking at all. And that's when he decided to trade Keenan Allen and get him into the mix, who, to be honest, tried his best to carry this team. I mean, if you guys remember, Keenan Allen went off for 50 points one week, and he still couldn't win. However, he got his first win in week 6 against the GOAT squad, and then would actually end week 9 with a 3-5 record. So not the worst, actually, in terms of positioning yourselves. He actually was not in a bad spot. He shipped out Keenan Allen after this point for Joe Mixon and others, but after this, the team fell down again. He tried to make more trades to finish out the year, but it wasn't enough, and Chubb Checker ended up losing 4 more games. That sucks. That's really bad. As I mentioned, he made a lot of trades. He tried to do the best he could. He tried to pull himself out of the hole. However, it just kept getting unlucky with players not performing well when they should have. He had one loss against Chris, who you put up like 140 points and you still lost. You can't do nothing about that. That's just gonna happen. You had a 50-point performance from Keenan Allen in a loss, and it's just gonna happen. The reason for missing for Chubb Checker, I'm gonna put injuries. I do think if Nick Chubb doesn't go down and Devon Achane doesn't go down, this team looks really different. I think this team maybe wins a few more games just in terms of how his roster would have been constructed throughout the season. But with those guys going down so early, especially Chubb, I think the manager didn't panic, but his thinking was clouded based on the fact that he didn't have his, high draft pick in there. Drink your diet soda. It's Diet Pepsi. Wow, cherry, pretty good. Team DD. Another shocker here, actually, like the GOAT squad. I had this team ranked very high early on in this season. If you guys remember with the preseason power rankings, like the first 3 weeks of the season, I was like, I'm really high on Team DD. The team was firing on all cylinders. It looked fantastic. And what I thought was a great draft and going 2-1 turned into a nightmare for Team DD and just the onlookers of the league. Look, he lost Justin Jefferson in week 5, his first overall pick, and his team fell apart, as it should have. Okay, if you get a guy, first overall pick, right, you're not going to get another guy for about 20 picks. So you have to nail that first overall pick, and as it may be cursed, it didn't happen. Now couple this with bad trades for George Pickens and Brian Robinson, the team simply did not have enough firepower, right? You traded away multiple decent players for terrible guys. George Pickens ain't even on the team anymore, really, at least production-wise it feels like, and Brian Robinson, though he is solid, he's not Joe Mixon, especially how Joe Mixon has been in recent weeks. The team simply didn't have enough firepower. And is it unlucky that Jetta's missed 7 games due to a hamstring injury? Of course it is. We're not saying that it's not unlucky. But people inquired you about Jetta's throughout the season. They were going to buy into the long waiting game for Jetta's to come back and save their season, give them that late season push, and you said no. You said you didn't want to do that, and I have to hold you accountable there, because you not pulling the trigger on what would have been anybody. You could have asked for anybody, even a Devontae Adams type player, even a Chris Olave type player. If you had just pulled the trigger on that, I think this team is a lot better and not fighting for last place. It costed you your season, like I said, on top of really bad trades that you made, and the fact that you didn't make trades that you should have made just compounded that level of shittiness. The reason for missing, I'm going to say it's the Jetta's injury. Of course, I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm not going to dog on the manager too much. He didn't have his first overall pick. You can't really have a good team unless you had the most insane draft in the fucking history of the world. You're going to fall apart if you draft Jetta's first overall this year. And it happened. Team DD was just that guy in our league this year. It happens. The next team I want to highlight is the reigning league winner. Thank you, Damar. Unfortunately, not going to be returning to the playoffs this year to defend his title. And why is that? Well, Dom's team got off to a very hot start, starting off 2-0, but quickly falling to 2-3. One compliment that I have for this team and the manager was the draft pick of Alvin Kamara, an absolutely great pick and a great stash to have at the beginning of the season. And as that was a great play, once he came back, Dom's team was able to get back to an above 500 record at 4-3 going into week 8. However, Dom also had a great steal in the draft in Kyren Williams, who is, I think, top 5 running back right now. But going into week 6, he had a massive trade for Cooper Kupp, if you guys remember, the big Cooper Kupp trade. And although he would get to 4-3 as I just mentioned, the trade would quickly prove to be a very regrettable decision, because he would then go on to lose 4 of his next 5 games. The Cooper Kupp trade was just an absolute shit show for Thank You Damar's team. He traded away Cooper Kupp, but it was too late at that point. Based on my calculations, though, he only lost week 9 due to the trade because of who he traded away. I believe at that point, Aaron Jones and Tony Pollard would have gave him enough points to beat, I think it was Chris that week. So he would have missed out on 1 win, which would have resulted in maybe a total season of 7-8 wins. That's just how I calculated. Maybe some other things happened. We saw the resurgence of Kyren Williams whenever he returned from that injury and how good he was. It elevated the GOAT squad to impressive levels. It just didn't work out for him. In a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt to save the season, Dom traded away Cooper Kupp and TJ Hockenson, actually, for Tank Dell, Dalton Kincaid, Devon Achane, Garrett Wilson. He traded top 2 players for a pretty decent bag. It just wasn't enough. Tank Dell ended up getting hurt. Achane got hurt. Wilson and Kincaid just really weren't that good when it mattered. Because of those trades, and it goes back to the Cooper Kupp trade, who I think we will cover in the Worst Trades of the Year award. It'll at least be a nominee, I can guarantee you that. A new champion will be crowned. To finish off Dom here, pause. I put his reason for missing: bad Cooper Kupp trade. He traded Kyren, Pollard, Jones. Next up, I have bigger than black and white, and unfortunately the second-year manager will be falling short of the playoffs once again, but he had a good season this year, better than last year. Look, this team confused me a lot of the time, because what I saw, and what I think many people saw, was a solid team that was just like underperforming. Early on in the season, it was living and dying on the back of CMC. Look, going into week 6, AJ was 2-3. Those 2 wins were because of CMC having to score 26 or more points, one of them going for almost 50. If you guys remember that game. But the 3 games he didn't score 26 resulted in losses. That's where the 2-3 record came from. So going into week 6, AJ ships out CMC for, I thought, was a pretty good haul. I can't lie, getting Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift, Puka. He had great talent now to fill out his roster, which, let's be honest, it was very depleted whenever CMC was there. And although he lost the star power from CMC, he was deeper and he could replicate the production from CMC, but just spread out over multiple players. I was a fan of this move, actually. In the week after the trade in week 6 against Tony, funny enough, who he traded CMC to, he won. So, things were looking great for this team. He was 3-3. The team was well-rounded. Rest of the season, going to make a run here? No. 4 straight losses, and that team completely fell apart. Guys that he brought in weren't clicking. No one was having those boom weeks, those like mega boom weeks that we could see from star players in the league at that point in time. But then he goes and he wins 3 straight games. Pretty under the radar, might I add. And the CMC trade finally started paying its dividends towards this end of the season, as we have maybe noticed, with the help of elevated wide receiver play, of course. Look, DK's been going insane, and Michael Pittman as well. But it was just a little too late. If that 4-game losing streak didn't happen, this team could definitely be a playoff team. He's got pretty great players throughout the team. The only weak spot is probably the quarterback and tight end, which is crazy because it's Patrick Mahomes and then Kyle Pitts, we all know. Rachaad White is an RB6 on the year. Puka is wide receiver 5, I believe. Michael Pittman and DK, they've been playing like top 10 wide receivers, I believe, in the past 2, 3, 4 weeks. So it's definitely possible that this team could have made a lot of noise in the playoffs, but it's just that 4-game losing streak where the team just was not clicking. This team spent a lot of the time, the majority of its time, towards the bottom of the power rankings. For a reason for missing, this was a tough one. I think honestly one of the toughest ones I had to pick for. I settled on not getting a new superstar and bad luck. The bad luck is just in part with the team not clicking once. We saw this with a couple other teams, but they were a little bit more successful, so it sucks for bigger than black and white. But the not getting a new superstar part, you had great guys, you had great, I want to say role players. You built the Detroit Pistons in 04, right? You had great players everywhere, but you didn't have a superstar. Now what's the difference? Well, they won in 04 and you didn't. Whenever you trade away your first round pick as so much of a star power CMC, you didn't bring in that guy to be that superstar for the team either. Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback, so I don't think he really counts. It's just unfortunate that deal wasn't able to be made. However, though, like I said, I think this team was well-rounded. Hopefully we see next year in the playoffs, because, look, we need to see AJ in the playoffs, He's still waiting for it. Chris, it's your time. I saved you for last. It's just crazy. Back-to-back league champion, Mr. Two Rings himself, unfortunately, finding himself in the losers bracket once again for the 2nd straight year. Mr. Two Rings, Mr. Back-to-Back is now Mr. Back-to-Back in the losers bracket. And you started off the year hot, making trades left and right, blockbusters, might I add. It started with trading A.J. Brown away for Cooper Kupp and Mike Williams after the first week. You started the year at 1-3. And I think there was some pressure there to kind of right the ship. Season started terrible. Of course, you were investing in the later part of your season with the Cooper Kupp trade, which I respect. In week 4, you traded for Ja'Marr Chase. That was a big blockbuster move. But you traded away Saquon and Rachaad White, who would be great fantasy running backs for the rest of the season. You also traded for Joe Mixon, an under-the-radar move that I didn't like at the beginning, when it first happened, but it kind of grew on me towards the end of the year, definitely. In week 5, it looked like the beginning of the end for the league. It was Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase playing together. In week 5 specifically, they combined for 72 points, which that might be a record for 2 people. And after this, you went on an absolute run, winning 5 of your next 6 games, putting yourself right back into the playoff contention conversation. Of course, you made a couple moves along the way. You brought in Keenan Allen, you got rid of Cooper Kupp, you shipped out Keenan Allen, you brought in Chris Olave. Honestly, I wanted to go back and see if you were affected by these trades, in the long runs, but there were so many moving parts that you did. There were so many trades that you made with players intertwined with one another. I couldn't do it, and I apologize for that, but I just couldn't. You made that many fucking trades. However, I will say, I think you won most of the trades. And I can't really say that for a lot of other people, especially with the criticism that you faced during the season. I mean, looking back, you won all but maybe 1 or 2 trades. And I think that was the Cooper Kupp trade. Although I can say all that, it didn't really matter because when it came down to winner go home time, winning you're in against Judd in week 14, the team did not show up. And this is when I wanted to go back and look and see how these trades made an impact for now, but like you mentioned before, the team that you built got you to this point, but the team that you built just did not have the power to go into the playoffs, apparently. I do think you had a great team this year, but you fell to Judd in week 14. You missed your chance, and it was an embarrassing fashion, might I add. Do I think you could have made 1 or 2 less trades? Yeah, sure, I think you could have. I think it might have been more beneficial. Do I know exactly where to pinpoint these trades? No, I don't. I think it got messy, like it did with Tamar Monty. But in the end, it just didn't go your way. I mean, you have to accept that. Your team put up 80 points week 14 in a winner-go-home game. That sucks. That's like Georgia and TCU. I don't know. You can point fingers at any point of the season. You can point your fingers at any trades that you made. You can say it was unlucky. But you were the one that pulled the trigger on the trades. Although I commend you, although I do think you won the trade, just because you won the trade doesn't mean that you won the season, clearly. I think managers kind of forget that sometimes, including myself. We get so tied up in winning or losing a trade that we don't understand the repercussions of how the team is affected later on in the season. Whether those players be on our team or not by the end of the season, it's just how they were set up to affect our team. I think this is a huge case of that. One thing is for certain, the 2-time champion will not be going for glory, and the reason for him missing is a bad start and a bad finish. So guys, that's going to do it for the reasons why these 6 teams did not make the playoffs this year. Hopefully this is okay. I mean, I tried to do my best with kind of looking at reasons for missing and pinpointing reasons and kind of just recapping these guys' seasons. Look, I think all of these guys, besides Team DD, had a chance to make the playoffs. I really do think that. Even with Nick Chubb going down for Chubb Checker, I think there was a chance. This was such a competitive year, and I think we should all be proud of that. Hopefully we can get some in-person interviews of these managers, maybe seeing what they thought about their seasons and why they think they didn't make it. Because, again, I could be completely wrong and they could have different opinions than me. I try to do my best putting myself in their shoes of why they missed. Like I said, it would be great to hear from some managers about this. That's going to do it for this video. If you have not already, go back to the channel. Whether they're uploaded now or not, I don't know. They'll be soon if they're not already. But there's some great videos coming to the channel. We got the Week 15 forum, which that won't be long at all, I promise. We're just going to be highlighting the reviews and previews for the playoffs. I mean, that's literally it. Giving my prediction for who I think will win the championship and the toilet bowl. And then I also have this type of video for the teams that did make the playoffs. And I think that'll be a great video too, just to see how they managed to get here. I don't want anyone to think I was like dogging on them or trying to bring up sensitive subjects. I was just being objective. I was trying to be the most fair I could. Hopefully I did good for you guys. If you enjoyed it, leave a like for sure. Really appreciate that. Yeah, guys, don't get last.